Hello and welcome to Top Story. In recent years, the arrival of a British Prime Minister in the United States has been a cause for celebration in Washington, an opportunity to sing the praises of the special relationship with Great Britain, and for George W. Bush to savour the rare pleasure of sharing views with a like mind on Iraq. But there's not much savouring or celebrating going on this week. The three-day visit by Gordon Brown to the United States, which began on Wednesday, has been overshadowed by the simultaneous arrival of Pope Benedict XVI, while Brown, whose standing at home has plummeted, is waiting to see what direction US policy takes once Bush has gone. British relations with the US are in a trough following the euphoria of the Blair years, although Brown says he sees a role for Britain as a bridge between Europe and whatever new administration emerges in Washington. He also wants to use this week as an opportunity to burnish his credentials as a heavyweight in international financial affairs and urge the case for greater liquidity in global financial markets. Well, joining me now to discuss the visit and the US-British relationship is Sir Christopher McRae, a former British ambassador and professor at the American Graduate School of International Relations and Diplomacy. Thanks very much for being on Top Story. It's a difficult visit for Gordon Brown, this one, isn't it? It comes at an awkward moment in the life of the Bush administration.
The timing is not ideal for either side because, as you know, as you said, their standings in the polls at home are both rather low. And so neither is going to be able to relight the embers of the political popularity which they would wish. So it's not time. The timing is not at all perfect. But these things happen a bit accidentally. The fact is that between Britain and the United States, there is a very close, but nevertheless more informal relationship. Between Britain and France, for example, there's an annual summit, and that date is known long in advance. In the case of Britain and the United States, it will have been arranged a few weeks or a few months ago, probably during the height of the financial crash.
Well, one thing that is clear about this visit is that Iraq is no longer the bonding issue that it was when Tony Blair was Prime Minister in Britain between the United States and Great Britain. There have been particular problems recently in Basra.
No, that's exactly right. And, of course, for both sides it's tricky because Mr. Bush seems set on leaving office with his Iraq policy more or less intact, whereas the position of Gordon Brown is much more nuanced, and the British side is withdrawing troops from Iraq, though no announcement has been made so far about what will happen when the magic number of 5,500 has been reached for the drawdown which is presently going on.
And he also wants to see what shape American foreign policy takes when the new administration comes in. It's an opportunity for him this time round to meet some of the candidates. I think, in fact, he may be meeting all of them this time round, I think.
He's meeting all three of them. And I'd love to be a fly on the wall at these meetings, which I think are taking place in the British ambassador's Lutyens residence in Washington. He has already met Hillary Clinton quite a lot of times, and he caused a bit of a rumpus last time he came to Washington last summer because he ducked out of his official program in order to meet Bill Clinton, who, of course, is an old friend and old colleague on the international circuit. So he knows Hillary Clinton fairly well already, and he made some encouraging noises the other day about her economic policy as a presidential candidate. He also knows McCain. He's met McCain a good many times and will like his strong Atlanticist credentials.
But less in tune with McCain on Iraq, I suspect.
Less in tune with McCain on Iraq, exactly, because McCain is taking a hawkish line on that. But as far as Barack Obama is concerned, he hasn't met him hitherto, so this will be a new discovery for him.
The timing of this visit is particularly bad, isn't it, with the Pope being in Washington at the same time as Gordon Brown. You're a former diplomat. How can it happen that the British Prime Minister arrives at the same time as the Pope?
As I was saying, pretty much by accident, because this will have been jacked up some weeks ago. And the reason was, as you mentioned earlier, probably in the first place to do with the world economy, in which he's had a number of talks. And probably at the time, this was the only mutually possible gap in the two programs in which in which Brown could actually get 3 days off to come to Washington. As you say, the timing is far from ideal. To be overshadowed by the Pope is not ideal at all for any leader.
What about the special relationship, though, between the US and Great Britain? At the moment, things seem to be in a bit of a trough. There was the warm years of Tony Blair and Bush, but now it doesn't seem to be quite the same. Does that suggest that there's not really the sort of substance that people often think there is to the so-called special relationship?
No, I would say exactly the reverse, actually. I mean, the special relationship is a bit like stocks and shares. The values rise and fall according to moments in history. But it's there, and it actually means something. There is a lot of cynicism among journalists about whether there's any substance to this thing. All I can tell you, having been in the trade, is that there is a lot of substance for a variety of reasons. I have to say that French diplomats serving in Washington are sometimes quite envious of their British counterparts because of the special access which British diplomats get in Washington. This may not be the best moment in the relationship, but it's not about to change dramatically in any way at all. So in spite of the crests
and troughs of politics, the special relationship underlies the special relationship between the US and Britain underlies whatever's going on.
Absolutely, and it matters because people speak the same language. I don't mean that literally, they speak English. It's because they're on the same wavelength, and both politicians and certainly civil servants, diplomats, actually get on remarkably well. And so that is always there, ticking away in the background, is extremely important.
Now, very briefly, if you could, because we're running out of time, Gordon Brown is saying he can still see Britain playing a key role as a bridge between the US and Europe. Does Europe really need a bridge? Sarkozy was in the US quite recently and seemed to be getting on fine without British help.
Absolutely. I mean, I think this is a bit of a mood music which all British Prime Ministers for the last 30 years always play. It doesn't necessarily mean anything now.
OK, and that, I'm afraid, is all we have time for today. Thanks to our guest, Sir Christopher McRae. Join us again tomorrow for another edition of Top Story. Goodbye.